All right.
Welcome. My name is John Meter. I'm chairman of the Town of Northborough, Massachusetts Water and Sewer Commission. Tonight's public hearing, due to technical issues, has been delayed by approximately 20 minutes. It was scheduled originally for 5:30 p.m. It's now 5:50 p.m. I do have some introductory reading to do, so we have a third member that we're trying to connect in. So we're going to try to take care of some business before that third member comes in. So this open meeting of the Water and Sewer Commission is being conducted remotely pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, signed into law on March 29th, 2023. This meeting will be conducted via remote participation. All members of the Water and Sewer Commission are allowed and encouraged to attend remotely or participate remotely. This order allows the Water and Sewer Commission to meet entirely remotely, so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless the chair notes otherwise. Members of the public who wish to view the live stream of this meeting may do so by going to Northborough Remote Meetings on YouTube via the link listed on the agenda. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. Members of the commission at this point, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Bryant Furman. Bryant is the member that's currently having some technical issues. Hopefully he'll be able to join us, and I'll acknowledge him when we see him. Member David Pepe.
Yes, I'm here.
And member John Meter is present. Town staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Scott Charpentier, Director of Public Works.
I'm present, Mr. Chairman, and before you go on, after you get the rest of the staff members' acknowledgement, you're free to forego the meeting business ground rules if you choose to not have to read the next page and a half of documents. They're not required. It's your discretion.
Okay, that's fine. So you're present, Scott?
Present.
All right. Tim Davison.
I'm present.
Robert Luke is currently offline. He's assisting with Bryant Furman. Okay, so I guess with that, Scott, let me go to our first item on the agenda, which is consideration of our meeting minutes from the July 18th, 2023 regular meeting. David, I don't know if you had any comments or edits.
No, I did not.
Okay, I reviewed it also. I did not have any comments. So, David, if you will, I will take a motion to approve the minutes as written.
This will be a motion to approve the minutes of the July 18th, 2023 regular meeting as written.
Motion made. I will second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Or I guess we have, do we need to do an official roll call, Scott?
You should, yes.
Okay. This is a motion to approve the July 18th, 2023 regular meeting as written. Commissioner Pepe.
Aye.
Commissioner Meter is aye. And Commissioner Furman is absent at the present time. Okay, our next item is a public hearing to consider water and sewer rate adjustment. Scheduled originally for 5:30 and due to technical issues, is now 5:55. I do have some additional introductory opening language, and then we'll hand it over for a presentation. Pursuant to the regulations for users of the Northborough Water Supply and Distribution System, Section C, subsection 6, the Northborough Water and Sewer Commission will conduct a public hearing to consider a water and sewer rate adjustment on Tuesday, August 16th, 2023 at 5:30 p.m. Pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, signed into law on March 29th, 2023. This meeting will be conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance by members of the public will be permitted. Information as to how to participate in the public comment portion of this meeting was previously provided in the posted public hearing notice and legal advertisement. And I think that's my introductory stuff. I will now hand over the meeting for a presentation from town staff and our consultant, at which point we will take any comments or questions from the commission members. Then we'll open it up for public comment. And I anticipate we will then close the public hearing and then immediately thereafter take action on the water and sewer rate adjustment. I see our third member, Bryant Furman, appears to be available. Bryant, can you acknowledge that you're available now as a member?
I am here.
Okay, very good. So we have a full board available. I will now hand it over to Public Works Director Scott Charpentier, who will introduce our consultant and provide some background on tonight's information. Scott?
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I have with us tonight Dave Fox from Raptellus Financial. This is our annual public hearing for water and sewer rate adjustments. I'll give a brief overview of the process we go through, and then Mr. Fox can go into a little deeper dive into the rate study itself, and then we can unveil the findings at the end. So we go through this process every year. It's an evaluation of the water sewer enterprise fund rates. The water sewer enterprise funds are self-sufficient. So what that means is that all the revenue that comes in from your water sewer bills goes toward the operating expenses without any subsidies. So during the fiscal year, we're projecting and monitoring our revenue, which is the water and sewer sales, and comparing that to our expenditures. There are other caveats that are included in that analysis. That includes capital improvements and capital purchases, replacement of aging equipment and facilities. All that culminates at the end of a fiscal year after June 30th with a full tally of what the expenditures were last fiscal year, the revenue from last fiscal year. We then take those values, project them through the upcoming fiscal years to come up with what rate adjustments, if any, are required to accommodate the projected needs of each one of the enterprise funds. As we are aware in our home lives, costs escalated pretty substantially last year. Our utility bills went up substantially, which affects both water and sewer. Sewer, a lot on the electrical side due to the pumping requirements, but it affects both water and sewer. There are supports needed for our capital funds. We maintain a fund reserve that's like a savings account. The savings account is there for large purchases to offset possible borrowing for some of the moderate sized projects, and as an emergency fund in the event something really bad happens, whether it be financial or physical. So the value of the savings account is critical, as are the projections for both revenue as well as expenditures. And we go through this every year to maintain a solid financial foundation for both of these funds. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dave to go a little more into what the findings were of this year, and then I'll be back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Scott. Good evening, commissioners. My name is Dave Fox, Vice President of Ref-Telus. Been working with the town now on water and sewer rates for, I think, the last 7 or 8 years at this point. Going through the same annual process that Scott just went through, and actually we're looking at rates and finances, more than just once a year. Scott and I are having multiple conversations throughout the year, understanding how things are changing. How is our budget looking? What we thought it was going to be versus what the actual expenses are coming in. How is that capital improvements plan changing? Incredibly important. How is revenue coming in? How much water are customers using? Which is the predominant way in which you're billing customers and can have a significant impact on revenues. But throughout the year, we're having those conversations just so we're on top of things and ensuring that there's no significant surprises. And if there are, we know about them earlier rather than later. But as we get to the tail end or the end of a fiscal year, we just got through with fiscal year 2023, as Scott mentioned, kind of tally everything up, understand how much money we spent, how much money we brought in. And then we start taking that forward for the upcoming fiscal year 2024, as well as we want to look at what's coming in fiscal year 2025 through fiscal year 2029, kind of thinking about a 5-year forecast. And the reason for that, and it's something I always commend this commission for doing and the town for doing, you're not just looking at a fiscal year in a silo. Too many communities do that, and they're not projecting what might be coming in year 2, 3, 4, 5 in a forecast. Now, we can't predict that with perfect certainty, but we can, plan for the future with the best information we have today and try to start making adjustments accordingly. So as such, we have developed a comprehensive financial planning model for the town, both the water and the sewer funds, to be able to look at how we think operating expenses are going to change over that 5-year forecast. Things like your MWRA assessments. Actually, MWRA assessment came down a little bit in fiscal year 2024 compared to 2023. Looking at things like Marlboro use charges, looking at other operating expenses like your local administrative and operational costs. We factor all that in and understand or try to make a determination to the best of our ability of how those are going to change over that forecast period, focusing obviously on the upcoming fiscal year, and in this instance, fiscal year 2024, but again, planning for the future with the best information we have today. We also taken into consideration your existing debt service schedules, how much money you need to generate on an annual basis to pay for your debt service, and the financing of the capital improvements plan, as Scott mentioned. So we look at what projects you need to undertake, when those projects are going to occur, how much money they're going to cost, and incredibly important, how are you going to pay for them? Some of the highlights of the CIP over the next 5 years are, reservoir dam compliance, water main replacement, SCADA system upgrades, inflow and infiltration mitigation, and just some miscellaneous equipment and vehicle purchases, paid for by a mixture of cash or pay-go, as I refer to it, as or pay-as-you-go, generating money on an annual basis to pay for those capital improvements, as well as new debt service to spread the costs out over a longer period of time and not burden ratepayers to a great degree for a significant capital improvement. We kind of bring all that together, the revenue requirements, and then we compare, or the costs, and we compare that against our revenues. How are revenues coming in now, and how do we think they're going to be coming in the upcoming fiscal year, as well as over the next 5-year period? For example, we've been seeing reductions in per capita consumption on an annual basis. We want to factor that in and have a slightly declining consumption base going forward. That all allows us to have a cash flow to understand how much additional revenue do we need with that revenue cash flow to meet those expenses or those revenue requirements every single year. we're not only looking at, and Scott alluded to this, we're not only looking at revenue sufficiency, so ensuring that revenues are meeting those expenses, we're also looking at things like your financial viability. And we predominantly look at your reserve fund balances. So, everybody on this call and everybody watching at home should have a savings account. Water and sewer funds are no different for planning for significant capital improvements that are coming and offset the costs of those, or or having some money set aside for emergencies, as Scott mentioned, or for a pandemic that comes out of nowhere and your MWA assessment goes up 20+%. You have some money sitting aside there so you don't have to deviate significantly from the rate forecast that we're trying to establish in a very programmatic way and try to manage those increases so they're kind of equal every year rather than having sharp fluctuations. And having that reserve fund allows us to do that. So we're trying to maintain about 75 days of total revenue requirements annually, which amounts to about 20% of your total costs sitting in a reserve fund balance. And so we're looking at that as well as the financial sufficiency. Bringing that all together this year for fiscal year 2024, we are recommending a 4% increase on the water volumetric rates, as well as about a 5.5% to 6% increase on the water fixed charges, which amounts to about $1 increase for typical every residential customer within the town per quarter. So it's getting $1 more from your fixed charges from each residential customer each quarter. The reason that we're recommending to increase those fixed charges as well as the volumetric charges, the fixed charges provide for great revenue stability. So where we have fluctuations in consumption from year to year, which we do have predominantly due to weather. So if we have a very cool, wet spring, summer, fall, and consumption declines accordingly, your revenues are going to decline, given that the vast majority of your revenue come from the amount of water customers are using. And when that consumption comes down, your revenue comes down accordingly. And by having a portion of your revenue coming from fixed charges, it helps mitigate that risk associated with that volatility that we see. So we're trying to, as often as possible, obviously keeping into consideration the customer impacts that occur when we're increasing fixed charges. We're balancing those two, but we think it's a great idea to continue slowly creeping up the amount of revenue you have coming from these fixed charges. So about a 4% increase on the water side, and then on the sewer side as well, a 4% increase on the volumetric rates on sewer, as well as the sewer flat charges, a 4% increase there. Just to provide a little bit of context, over the last 20 years across the country, water and sewer rates have been increasing by about 4.6% and 5.2% respectively, water and sewer, every single year for the last 20 years. And so on both water and sewer here, we're below that national average. We're continuing to reinvest in the system, maintaining strong financial health by maintaining those reserve fund balances, and doing so while mitigating rate increases to the greatest degree possible, such that we're actually below the national average. And I think this is a product of this commission and the DPW looking at this as frequently as they do and having a very forward-thinking approach to setting rates rather than doing things in a silo. It allows us to predict the future with the best information we have and have more steady increases and more manageable increases for customers. What does a 4% increase mean? So if we put this in a context of your typical residential customer who uses about 1,900 cubic feet of consumption per quarter, 100 cubic feet is about 748 gallons. That customer, your typical residential customer, will see a combined water and sewer increase per quarter in their bill of about $14. This amounts to about $4.67 per month increase, or if we break it down even further, 16 cents per day for both water and sewer service with the increases we're talking about here. I'll say one more thing and I'll turn it over for questions. I mentioned before, we are forward looking, throughout the remainder of our 5-year forecast. So for the last 4 years of the forecast, just to provide a little context here, we are showing about 4% increases annually. But as I say, every single year when I'm sitting in this position, we need to keep reevaluating this annually. So those rates are not set in stone. We're going to have this exact same public hearing, this exact same process that we went through over the last few months, digging through all the details, updating the model, looking at where things have been and where they're going. We're going to continue to update that. But just to give you a little bit of context there, we are showing at this point in time 4% increases annually for the remainder of the 5-year forecast. With that being said, thank you. It's always great working with the town. I appreciate it. And I'll turn it over for any questions or comments that the commission has.
Thank you, David. We, as a commission, met last month to review the draft study and had a number of questions at that point. Let me quickly, Scott Charpentier, backtrack, because when I opened the public hearing, I read the wrong date on the notice, and I just want to make sure we're not technically invalid. So this public hearing was for Tuesday, August 22nd, 2023 at 5:30 p.m. It actually started at 5:55 p.m. So to backtrack, well, we did meet last month and had some questions. I guess at this point, the biggest item that we probably should touch upon, and we do it year after year, and hopefully eventually we won't have to talk about it much more, is the situation with the Marlboro wastewater plant and the fact that we're holding a considerable dollar value of reserve funds. So you may want to address that issue if you could.
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. And thank you for the public hearing correction. It was advertised as the 22nd in the newspaper 2 weeks in advance. So the city of Marlboro and the town of Northborough continue the litigation that has been ongoing for several years. What we have incorporated into all of our rate studies, as well as our operating budgets, is projections on what we believe is a fair and reasonable Marlboro use charge. In the past, under past IMAs, intermunicipal agreements, the town of Northborough paid to the city of Marlborough our proportionate share of their operating costs associated with the Westerly treatment plant. That's where all of our sanitary sewer discharges to. When the IMA expired, the city of Marlborough changed their billing methods. We proceeded to continue showing that same methodology in our rate studies with annual projected increases every year. The delta between what we actually paid in the bills and what we were projecting as our share of operating expenses, that delta has been put into our savings account every year. It grows every year. In addition to that, we have been allocating funds toward our share of a large loan that the city of Marlborough took for improvements to the treatment plant. Again, it's our proportionate share of that loan. That payment has been projected in all of our rate studies. Obviously, not obviously, we have not made those payments as we're in litigation, but those funds have been collected through the revenue stream. They have been deposited into the savings account. So, the fund balance, when you look at the fund balance on the water enterprise fund, our goal is that 20%, 75 days. Our goal is to build that up, as Dave Fox indicated, in advance of substantial projects on the sewer side. You'll see multiple years of operating expenses in the savings account. And that's why it's there. Every year, the town of Northborough goes through a full financial audit, as every community does. Every year, our financial auditor gets a detailed explanation on why those funds are so high in the sewer enterprise fund, what they're to be allocated toward, and how they were arrived at. So when you look through the study and you see what appears to be maybe a decimal point in the wrong location, that's not the case. It's us, again, having some belt and suspenders and planning for the worst and hoping for the best.
Okay, at this point, I will open it up for any questions or comments from the commission. As I indicated, we did meet previously and have reviewed the study and the background calculations. So I don't really have any questions on my side.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry, Commissioner Pepe.
I was gonna say, I don't have any comments. I looked over the latest revision that was sent out by you, and I'm good with it.
As the chairman indicated, we have all gone through this. This document was submitted to the commission well over a month ago for preliminary reviews, presented at the meeting July 18th. Comments have been received and addressed, so the commission has gone through this in detail for quite some time now. I'm sorry, Commissioner Furman.
Looks good to me.
Thank you.
All right, so could you just quickly again summarize what the study recommendations are so that we can quickly summarize and move to the motion at when we close the hearing?
So we're recommending the commission approve a 4% volumetric increase on the water rates, a 4% volumetric increase on the sewer rates, a 4% increase to the sewer only flat rate. And for the water base charges, $1 increase for residential per quarter, $3 increase per quarter for commercial, and $5 increase per quarter for industrial. Those base charge increases all equate to somewhere between 5.5% and 6%.
And just quickly, assuming that we do make the adjustment tonight, what's your schedule for when customers will see this increase in their bills, please?
We will submit, we'll issue rate change notifications to all the customers. They'll receive this information a minimum of 14 days in advance of the application of these new rates. So their next water bill, not the one that they've received about a week ago, their next water bill will be the one where they see the increases, the changes.
Okay. So the commission has had their questions and comments. At this point, I will open it up for public comment as follows. By phone, dial *9 to raise your hand and wait to be recognized by the chair. Please note that part of your phone number will be visible to those viewing the meeting. By Zoom, click Raise Hand at the bottom of your screen and wait to be recognized by the chair. Chair will ask members of the public who wish to speak to identify their names and addresses only. And then once I have a list of all public commentors, we will provide each person 3 minutes for any comments. So we'll allow a little bit of time for folks if anyone is there. I'm not sure if I actually ever see anything. I'm relying on the administrator here.
Mr. Chairman, there are no attendees in the attendee room, but that doesn't prevent phone-ins for those who may be watching on YouTube or public access television. But currently there are no attendees participating in the meeting.
Okay, well, we'll allow 30 seconds, 45 seconds or thereabouts, and then we'll move to close the hearing. I will note, as in past years, we have not had any participation during the public hearings for the last 5 years, as far as I can recall, and I think credit to the town staff for presenting the information in a timely fashion so that folks can absorb before the hearing. So thank you, Scott, and
Thank you,
Tim,
thank you, Mr. Chairman.
and Rob in the background.
Mhm.
Okay, so I guess at this point, we're not going to have any public comment, so I will take a motion to close the public hearing of the Northborough Water and Sewer Commission. Commissioner Furman,
I move to close the public hearing of the Northborough Water and Sewer Commission.
all right, second? Commissioner Pepe, perhaps a second? Unmute, please.
Second the motion to close.
Okay, all right,
hearing.
so we're gonna, we'll do a roll call here. So motion made and seconded, all in favor? Commissioner Furman,
Aye.
Commissioner Pepe,
Aye.
and Commissioner Meter is an aye. And now we will move, as the public hearing's been closed, we'll move to adopt the water rates as presented. So I'll take another motion, if you would, please.
This is a motion to adopt the water and sewer rates as presented to the commissioners tonight at the public hearing.
Second.
All right, motion made and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote, please. Commissioner Furman,
Aye.
Commissioner Pepe,
Aye.
and Commissioner Meter is an aye. All right, I don't see on our agenda there's anything further to discuss. I don't know, Scott Charpentier, do you?
No, Mr. Chairman, that concludes the business for that I have for the meeting.
Okay, well, as always, I want to express our appreciation to Dave Fox at Raftellus. You get to see us once on video once per year, but I know you do a lot of background stuff. So again, we always appreciate your efforts on the town's behalf.
It's my pleasure. It's always great working with you all, and thanks to Scott. He does a lot of the legwork as well, and he keeps me in line. So,
all right, very good. So now I will take a motion to adjourn the meeting of the Water and Sewer Commission. Scott Charpentier, do we want to set a new meeting date or to be determined?
A new meeting date would be helpful, just at least so we have a placeholder. Maybe is October 3rd available?
(5:30 p.m.)
Good for me.
Yes.
Good for me.
Oh, I'm sorry, October 3rd does not
No.
work. I'm sorry, it would be the 10th. I had the wrong Tuesday.
10th works for me.
Yes, that should be okay with me.
And it's good also for myself.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so now we will take a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I move to adjourn the meeting of the Water and Sewer Commission.
Second.
All right, motion has been made and seconded. Any further conversation on this? All right, roll call vote, please. Commissioner Furman,
Aye.
Commissioner Pepe,
Aye.
and Commissioner Meter is aye. So again, thank you. We apologize for the technical issue at the start in terms of delaying the meeting, but hopefully folks will be able to see what happened. Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you.